الان برای مهرداد درفشی راجع به ترجمه سنسکریت نریوسنگ متن فرورانه، یعنی study of نریوسنگ Sanskrit version of the فرورانه. please برای درفشی take the floor. بفرمایید.
Hello, Professor Charity. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank Professor Charity and Professor Dari to provide this opportunity. I hope everyone would enjoy my presentation. Can you see my screen, my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. My presentation is about study of Neriosang's Sanskrit version of Fravarane. But first, what is Fravarane? Fravarane, confession to Zoroastrian creed, is one of the most important repeated sections throughout the Avesta, originally placed in Yasna chapter 12 and 13, although beginning from the end of Yasna chapter 11, it is the main subject of these two yasnas. This section is called after the word fravarane, a verb from the stem var, with the meaning of I intend to choose, which begins the key sentence of this section. Fravarane is based on 4 fundamental principles: sacrifice to Mazda, following Zarathustra, enmity with Devas, and following Ahurian doctrine. Fravarane has 2 main parts: Prastuye from Yasna chapter 11, paragraph 17 to the end of Yasna chapter 12, paragraph 7, and Astuye from Yasna chapter 12, paragraph 8 to the end of Yasna chapter 13. From Yasna chapter 12, paragraph 1 to 7, Infrastructure is also called Frawerity. Westergaard, in his edition of Avesta, considered final paragraphs of Yasna 11 belonging to Yasna 12, chapter 12. And then what is Zand? The Middle Persian word Zand is etymologically related to the Avestan word Azainti and means explanation, interpretation. One of the earliest use of the term Azainti in such context is in Yasna chapter 57, paragraph 8, which describes recitation of Gathas by Zarathustra, Mat Paiti Frasol, Mat Azaintish, together with explanations, together with answers. There are a lot of evidences that interpretation and exegesis of the Avestan text started at the earliest stages of Zoroastrianism. For example, Yasna chapters 19 to 21, Baghaniyasht, are actually interpretation and commentary of the most famous Zoroastrian prayers, Ahuna Vairia, Ashimbuhu, and Yinghe Hatam, in Avestan language. But regarding the extant Zand text and traditional history of the term, today what we call Zand are translation and commentary of Avestan text in Middle Persian language. Videvdad, Yasna, Visperat, and Yashts are among the Avestan texts that their Zand is available today, whose Zand are very different in the terms of merit, worth, and accuracy. But who is Neriosang? After the overthrow of the Sasanian Empire, a group of Iranian Zoroastrians subjected to severe persecution migrated to India in order to follow their religious beliefs in peace. This group soon became a dignified and established minority in Indian society, called as the Parsis of India. In order to merge into the cultural environment of the host society, they began to translate the important religious texts to Sanskrit, which led to Gujarati translations later. The major figure, or maybe the only one, in the translation of Zoroastrian texts to Sanskrit was a high priest called Neriusseng, son of Dawal. Most of the scholars, based on their calculations of the tables of descent of Parsi priests, place him in the 12th century, but if we consider less than 30 years for each generation, we can even place him in the beginning of the 14th century. Neriusseng was also behind the idea of transcribing the Persian text into the Avestan alphabet, which was more precise and did not have annoying problems of Pahlavi script. Of course, this text, known as Pazand, reflects the pronunciation and understanding of Parsis of Middle Persian text at that time. But what is the method of Neriusseng? Avestan language has an inflection system for nouns which consists of 8 cases. On the other hand, Middle Persian has almost lost this inflection system. They managed to do to 2 cases, direct and oblique. Friedrich Spiegel was the first scholar who noticed that the translators were obliged to use prepositions in order to transfer meaning of these grammatical categories into Middle Persian. Sanskrit is also an inflected language, and it seems that Neriusseng should not have any problem to translate from Avestan language. But is it the case? Has Neriusseng translated from Avestan? Let's see what he himself has said at the beginning of Sanskrit Yasna. Idan ejisna janda pustakan maya Neriusseng hana dhavalastutena Pahlavi jandat Sanskrita bhashayan avataritan. This Ejisnizan book has been translated by me, Neriusseng, son of Dawal, from the Pahlavi Zan into the Sanskrit language. Study of all 3 versions in detail confirms Neriusseng's statement that he has translated the Zan, not the Avestan. In the study of Middle Persian Zan, we can see that there is a consistency between the Avestan noun cases and Middle Persian prepositions, while translating from an inflected language to a language that has almost no inflection, and there is also a similar consistency in translating reversely to an inflected language, which means translating the preposition of Middle Persian into Sanskrit noun cases. For example, translation of the words with the preposition pad to instrumental case in Sanskrit, or locative case when it has a locative meaning, along with andak, and so on. But although Neriusseng has based his translation on Middle Persian Zan, but he did not completely put aside the Avesta version. He sometimes has taken recourse to Avesta to correct mistakes in Middle Persian. For example, in Yasna 13, paragraph 1, we can see Imon Chazon Yano Baraiti, which means this earth who bears or carries us. Its Zan is In Zami ke Ani Ama Dahisht Purdar. This earth who is bearer or carrier of our creation. As you can see here, the translators misinterpreted the 3rd singular present indicative verb as feminine active present participle of the same stem bar, to bear, to carry, masculine form barand, and translated it to its Middle Persian equivalent, burdar. But in Sanskrit we have Enon cha jagatin ya asman bibati. This earth who bears or carries us. We can see here that the Sanskrit version is totally the same of the Avestan version. But in Zan, the translator deviated from the main text. Also, when Middle Persian encounters a lot of problems in rendering diverse forms of Avestan language, and thus forced to deviate from the main text, Neriusseng uses the abilities of Sanskrit to correct it. As we can see here, second person singular and plural imperative verbs were translated easily and correctly most of the time, but Zan translators had difficulties in third person singular and plural imperative. As you can see here, in Yasna 12.2, Hamoy Astu, which means mine may she be. Astu is a third person singular imperative. But we don't have such form in Middle Persian. In Zan, we have Ani Manas. In Golas, we have Kum Patan Mehman Baba. It is very common in Zan when the translator understands that he had translated, he had not translated exactly. He adds a gloss and tries to modify his translation. The meaning of the sentence is, she is mine, and the gloss, that is, may she be inhabitants of my body, or maybe guest. But in Sanskrit, because we have third person singular imperative, it says, sa me astu, or sa me astu. Kilame va pushi apyagatas astu, which means mine may she be, that is, she may she be a guest in my body, which is more close to the Avestan original than the Zan version. An interesting problem in Zan is the verbs with prefix. In Zan, the main part of the verb and the prefix are usually translated separately, and each one correctly, but the resulted rendering in some cases is not even meaningful and comprehensible in Middle Persian. So the meaning of the original Avestan verb is lost. Sometimes the translators try to explain the meaning in commentary, which is sometimes surprisingly correct, may be a result of a well-preserved tradition. In Yasna chapter 11, paragraph 17, we have frastuye. The verb stu has the meaning of to praise, but when the prefix fra adds to it, it means turn to. But as we can see here in Zan, the translator didn't understand the meaning of the verb correctly. He translated each part separately, as he translated stuye with stayem, and he understood correctly the person of the verb, but he didn't understand the meaning of it. And he translated fra separately as phrase, as an adverb. The resultant sentence is not rendering exactly the Avestan original. And we can see here the Sanskrit is also wrong and deviated from Avestan original, because the Sanskrit is based on the Zan. And we can see here the main verb is translated correctly, stayem, as staumi, but the adverbial part in Zan is also translated as an adverb prakrushtam, which means excellently, highly, like phrase in Middle Persian. Also, the verb stu, when adds to the verb, when adds to the root stu, it means to avoid. The sentence uskiush stuye tayacha, I avoid the robbery of the cattle, in Zan has been translated to all go span stayim as duzan, which is not really meaningful, which is not really meaningful. In the commentary, we have Kushan Nechewesh. You can see here that maybe from the tradition, they translated knew somehow what was the main meaning or what was the main message of the text. Also in Sanskrit, we have, you can see here, for example, as Duzan was correctly rendered in Sanskrit by Stenepia, which is ablative plural, and the verb is also correct. But the adverbial part, all, which was not adverb at the first place in Avestan version, is also translated to an adverb in Sanskrit, or chai, which is not consistent with the Avestan original. Also, Anaish via Mruvita Zarathushra, which means Zarathustra abjured them. The root stem Mru means to speak, but when V adds to it, it means abjure, to abjure. But in the Persian version, we have as Aveshon Bego Zartush. If we consider B, meaning except, it somehow conveys the meaning. The sentence, the resulted sentence, conveys the original meaning. In the commentary, we have also Aush Eid Goft U Dev Patsalari Mi Abaye Dashtan, which is consistent with the context of with the Avestan context. And in Sanskrit, we have Tepior Te Abravid Jaratushta. Excuse me. Erte here means is an adverb and means except. Because of this, I have said that we can also consider be not a preverb, but an adverb. Generally, an important question rises here whether these translated verbs had transferred original Avestan meaning at all or not, or did they take this new meaning influenced by Zan in the course of time in other Middle Persian texts? I think it's a very interesting question. An important subject in the translation of Neriosang is the words which he has used. Neriosang has used many Iranian loan words in his translation. These words are mainly Sanskrit transcriptions of Middle Persian words, but there are instances in which Neriosang preferred to use the Avestan words, such as Hamisha Spunta. There are interesting phonetic changes in these words, which are comparable with peculiar phonetic characteristics of Pazan texts. As we can see in the table, we have for Mejda, for Ormaz, Zarathustra for Zardosht and Zarathustra, Dini for Den, and we can see here, like Pazan, long A became long E. It is very common in Pazan text also. Also, the change of Z to J is very common. And we have Majdayasni for Mazdayasnan or Mazdayasni, and Janda for Zand, Zantu, and Frauraiti for Frauraiti or Frava. Excuse me. And we have also calques in neuroscience translation. In order to convey various concepts of Zand in Sanskrit, Neuroscience had to coin new words in Sanskrit, and by using these calques, he tried to translate as exactly as possible the important Zoroastrian religious terms of Zand. As you can see here, we have a very interesting word here, Swamin Majnani. It means wise Lord. You know, many scholars in the history of Avestan language, history of the study of Avestan language, they try to find the exact meaning of Ahura Mazda, and each one tried to reach to a viewpoint based on comparational linguistics and so on. But we have an interesting information. Neriوسنگ translate Ahura Mazda as wise lord. I don't think it would end the problem forever, but I think it's a very interesting data here provided for us, because it is not this translation is not an innovation of Neriوسنگ for sure. It is based on a tradition. It shows that the priestly community at that time understood it as this. It is also correct for the word Amara Mahattara, which is equivalent for Amaraspan. The first part, Amara, means immortal, like Amar. But for Aspan, we have Mahattara. Mahattara in Sanskrit means greater, or even greatest, very mighty, or very great. This is also interesting because I think it is not by unthought choice. It is from a long preserved tradition that they for sure understood Aspan's meaning, something like Mahattara or so on. And we have to consider this information in our studies when we want to understand the meaning of the word span in Middle Persian. Also, we have Labhamat. Labha means prophet. We can see here the calc, the produced calc here is totally based on the Middle Persian word Sudoman. And we have also for Mijda Nyayavati, Nyayava. Nyaya means judgment. And also Vipinna Devan. Vipinna means separated, equivalent to judge. And we have Gopashumataya here. I think it's also an interesting example. The main Avestan one was a word in instrumentive case, and was plural from Gaobish. In Zand, it was translated with pad, and in Sanskrit, it was also translated into instrumentive case. And the word Gopashu Matta is absolutely a cult. We don't have this word in Sanskrit text. Also, there are semantic loans. Neriوسنگ usually refused to use existing equivalent Sanskrit words while translating important terms, and he preferred to borrow them from Iranian languages. But when he adopts a specific Sanskrit word as a rendering, he usually defines it in the context of Iranian thought and changes the original meaning of the word. An important example is Deva, which originally means deity, God, but he uses it in the sense of demon. We have Deva, as we have explained, for Dev and Deva. And we have also Guru, which in Sanskrit means venerable teacher, and Neriوسنگ used it as an equivalent for the word, the Persian word Rat or Avestan word Ratu. And it has a specific designation for him. To finish my presentation, I would like to express a mistake here. We have in Yasna chapter 12, paragraph 9, Ahurai Mazdai Vispavu Chinahmi. The verb Chinahmi means I assign, from the root stem kaish, which means to teach. and we have this meaning of the root, its root stem in the Middle Persian zan, chashin, which means I teach. Ohmaz harvest abadi chashin. But there's a funny mistake here. In the Sanskrit version, we have Svamine Mahajnanine Vishwan Vibhutin Asvadayami. Asvadayami is a verb from a plus svadaya is from root stem sva, svad. Svad means to taste. Svadaya is causative, means to make, to taste, or even to taste, which is equivalent to the Persian cheshidan or cheshandan. Apparently, the translator, Neriwseng or whoever, understood the word, the verb chashim, something like mi chesham or chesham in Persian, and didn't understand the meaning of teaching from it. So he translated it as asvadayami, and thus the resulted sentence in Sanskrit has no meaning, really. This was my presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Meherdad Derfshi. Are there any questions or comments on this paper? So I see no questions or comments. It may be because time is moving on quite quickly, and we have all been here for a long time.
Everyone fell asleep.
No, I don't think that everybody fell asleep, but it's still talking about linguistic and philological subjects for 6 hours in a row. It's a challenge. I mean, it's easier to talk about other things, but thank you very much. I found your paper very, very interesting.
Thank you.
And I mean, I think it is, it helps us to delineate what a line of research within Middle Persian, that is Pahlavi and Avestan manuscripts, can be with a very philological outlook to it. I mean, it's not only linguistics, but first of all, it is the text, the manuscript, how it is done, what is written in it, how the translators relate one to the other, and what the translators themselves knew. Professor Jafari?
Yeah. Sorry?
No, I thought you had a comment because I saw your microphone.
Oh, no, thank you. No. It was very, very interesting and excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.